Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Our leading climate experts in the press and politics have weighed in on the flooding in Kentucky. Vice President Kamala Harris says the flooding is caused by the climate crisis. And the press universally agrees that the flooding in Kentucky was caused by the use of low-cost, reliable energy. We've heard from the press and politicians. Now let's look at the actual data. The two wettest months on record and the only months where Kentucky has averaged more than 10 inches of rain were January 1937 and January 1950. Note that Kentucky used to get a lot more rain in January prior to 1960 than they have over the last 60 years. Now let's look at the other months in Kentucky. The wettest February occurred in 2019 when they received 8 inches of rain. The wettest March in Kentucky was 1898 when they also received 8 inches of rain. Their wettest April was in 2011 when Kentucky also received 8 inches of rain. The wettest May in Kentucky was 1983 with 9 inches of rain. Kentucky's wettest June was 1928 with 8 inches of rain. Kentucky's wettest July was in 1910 with 8 inches of rain. This past month, July 2022, received about 7 inches of rain, which made it the 4th wettest July in Kentucky. The wettest August in Kentucky occurred in 1926 with 7 inches of rain. Kentucky's wettest September was in 1906 with 7 inches of rain. The wettest October in Kentucky was 1919 with 7 inches of rain. Kentucky's wettest November was 1921 with 6 inches of rain. And Kentucky's wettest December was 1990 with 8 inches of rain. So the only 2 months which Kentucky received more than 10 inches of rain were January 1937 and January 1950. Both months they received about 12 inches of rain. Now let's look at Kentucky summer temperatures. They peaked in 1936 and have plummeted over the last 80 years. During the summer of 1936, more than 2/3 of temperature readings in Kentucky were over 90 degrees. But the frequency of hot summer days in Kentucky has dropped by more than 50% since the 1930s. January 1937 was the wettest month in Kentucky. Let's look at the data for individual stations. During January 1937, Bowling Green, Kentucky received 20 inches of rain. Williamstown received 16 inches of rain. Shelbyville received 20 inches. Litchfield received 21 inches. Hopkinsville received 21 inches. Henderson received 20 inches. Greensburg received 18 inches. Frankfort received 16 inches. Cave Run Lake received 12 inches. Berea College received 14 inches. Barberville received 11 inches, and Ashland also received 11 inches during January 1937. Every location in Kentucky received more than 10 inches of rain during January 1937, and many locations received more than 20 inches. Now let's look at all of the United States Historical Climatology Network data for this past month, July 2022 in Kentucky. Barberville received 8 inches of rain. Cave Run Lake received 7 inches of rain. Henderson received 8 inches, and Bowling Green received 5 inches. So during July 2022, no place in Kentucky received more than 10 inches of rain, compared to January 1937, when every location in Kentucky received more than 10 inches of rain. During this past month, Bowling Green, Kentucky received 5 inches of rain. But during January 1937, they received 4 times as much rain. They got 20 inches that month. Kentucky is having nowhere near record rainfall, but the press says climate change is fueling record rainfall in Kentucky. Kentucky received less rainfall during July 2022 than they did during July 1910. But the press says that the rain in Kentucky is caused by the burning of fossil fuels and we're having a climate crisis. And of course, the Washington Post is weighing in with their usual fake news. Now let's take a look at the 10 worst floods in Kentucky. Not surprisingly, the worst flood occurred in January 1937, which was Kentucky's wettest month. The Ohio River in Louisville crested at 52 feet. Louisville's second worst flood occurred in 1945 with a crest of 42 feet. Louisville's third worst flood occurred in 1884 with a crest of 41.7 feet. Their fourth worst flood was in 1964, and their fifth worst was in 1883. The sixth worst flood in Louisville occurred in 1913. That flood was associated with the worst week in U.S. weather history, which occurred around Easter 1913. 1913 was also the year when California set the U.S. and world record temperature of 134 degrees on July 10th. Louisville's seventh and eighth worst floods occurred in 1997 and 1907, and their ninth and 10th worst floods occurred in 1948 and 1933. This is what Louisville, Kentucky looked like during their worst flood of January 1937. The January 1937 flood was the worst flood on record along the Ohio River. The flood covered more than 1 million acres of land. When the water reached the Mississippi River, it flooded almost 1 million homes and forced the evacuation of 652,000 people. Tall bridges were almost completely inundated by the January 1937 flood. The roller coaster at Kings Island in Cincinnati, Ohio, was largely underwater. As is normally the case, the claims of record flooding by the press and politicians have no basis in history and no basis in science. The press wants people to believe that eastern Kentucky flooding is something new and it's fueled by climate change. So let's go back and see what newspapers were saying in January 1950, which was Kentucky's second wettest month after January 1937. They said that Lexington received 15.65 inches of rain, which broke the previous record of 15.1 inches set in January 1937. They said that the Cumberland River had flooded eastern Kentucky towns many times in the past and is always feared during extended rains. All of this fake news about a climate crisis is dependent on the public being ignorant about history and ignorant about science. The U.S. Press Corps is doing everything they can to make sure the public remains misinformed. The purpose of all this fake news is to demonize low-cost, reliable energy. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on this war on energy for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki, and Upala on the web at realclimatescience.com.